Hi, I'm Elliot and he's John.
Hi, I'm John and he's Elliot, and this week we are joined with our good friend Cam.
We're talking about songwriting, youth leading, and the importance of music in our faith.
You're listening to The Still More Show.
Cameron Plant, you with us?
Hello.
There he is.
I'm here.
You're the first guest that we've ever had on our podcast.
Thanks. I'm honoured that you either you chose me first or through a freak of scheduling I'm first.
we just had 30 or 40 odd people cancel on us first.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because lots of people like to cancel on us.
Yeah, basically. So how do we know you? What do you do for a living? The answer is kind of the same thing. That's why I asked those two things together, I think.
So I'm the youth and children's worker at a church called Holy Trinity in Leicester, which is where I met you, John and Elliot. You were in my youth group.
Yes.
For 3 years.
Was it that long?
It was that long.
Was it that long? Wow, it doesn't feel like that.
Yeah, it flew by, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
So yeah, that's me. That's what I do. It's as always, it's a delight to see people that I've kind of see come through my youth work. Not that it's about me, that you've gone on to be such talented boys, but
I don't know. I definitely credit some of it to you.
Through and go on to what you're doing now. So
thank you. Thanks, I appreciate that a lot.
It's nice.
So John has spent this last year doing an internship in youth and children's work. I imagine it's possibly quite similar. What do? You run youth groups every week for what age kids?
We do a whole range really. So I'm in charge of youth work from 11 to 18, split into two groups. 11 to 14s and 14 to 18s, and then some stuff on a Sunday, ranging from 0 to 18, depending on where I am, and some stuff in schools in the week as well. Mm-hmm. So that's me really.
Beautiful. That's nice. We're really getting to know you. Right. One other question. In fact, John, do you want to ask this question?
Okay.
We're just curious.
Yeah.
Because Wait, which question?
The top one, the first one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So rather than asking what your average day would look like, because obviously we're in lockdown and everything's a bit boring.
Yeah.
And we could ask you about your normal day outside of lockdown if we weren't in lockdown. However, we're gonna ask you, what does your average 4:30 p.m. look like?
My average 4:30 p.m. Well, because working at home means timings are a bit more flexible. I normally don't start working until about 9:30, because I don't know really. I like to settle into my morning a little bit before I crack on. So I normally spend some time with God as well in the morning before I work. So that's been a real nice kind of upside of lockdown, is I can have a slightly later start than. And then so by 4:30 I'm still hard at work. So that's it really. Normally sat on my comfy chair in my bedroom at the minute during lockdown.
Nice. Where are you living at the minute? I don't want an address. Don't expose your address. But you said to me recently you've moved or something?
So I was living with my parents.
Yeah.
And then I knew kind of at the beginning of the year, one of the things that I wanted to do by the end of the year was move out. And then I met a guy called Ken, who also goes to Holy Trinity, who, if you go there, you might know.
Is that Ken in the band?
It is Ken in the band, yeah.
Yeah, I do know Ken. Guitarist. Yeah.
And he said, well, basically, he needed a new housemate, so I said how much he charging, and it was far too much. He lived in Knighton, and I'm only a poor youth worker. But then his house ended up being sold, so then we did a little house hunting together, and we ended up in a place in Ayleston, just near, between Ayleston Road and Saffron Lane. But I say I'm on the Ayleston Road end, so people know I'm not a Sapphite.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And to anyone that isn't familiar with Leicester, you don't want to be associated with Saffron Lane.
Got a good dentist, but that's about it.
Well, that's something. I mean, The final bit of getting to know you that we wanted to ask. This one's deadly serious. We want to know, because we get into deep conversations about this quite often. John and me do. We talk about toasties and sandwiches quite often.
Yeah.
And we would like to know, first of all, what is your favourite toasty, or do you have a toasty of choice? And secondly, I want to know, what do you think of sun-dried tomatoes?
Okay, well, I have actually got a controversial opinion on toasties that I have wanted to air for, and do air, but only
Well, here's the platform. Here's your
without
platform to air your opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
But here's my controversial statement.
Oh, no.
Even without brie in a podcast, even without brie in a toasty,
Yeah.
grapes are a great addition.
What? What? Grapes? Are you serious?
Yeah.
As in, hang on, do you mean grapes as the same thing that everyone grapes? Like grapes?
Yeah, like grapes, yeah.
What? Really?
You cut a grape in half, lay it in your toasty, put it in, and it just adds a nice little sweet pop. You get
Wow. But do you...
the grapes are hot, you get a nice little, hot, sweet...
hot grapes?
Hot.
I've never desired hot grapes.
That is worse than mulled wine.
No, I really don't like mulled wine, John. So I'm not like a.
What?
I'm
No,
not
I
fanatic
don't.
on the hot grape, but I'm telling you,
Wow.
it just works.
So, hang on, what are you having with your
Well,
grape
it does
toasty?
work well with. I mean, obviously, you do actually have grapes in toasties with brie, but it does work well with cheese. But with ham, cheese, ham, grape.
Yeah. Well, that's my basic. My basic go-to toasty is cheese and ham. That's what I. It's classic, isn't it? It's classic.
Yeah, I do love
And
cheese
I just to move on to the other point as well. I like sun-dried tomatoes with that. What do you think of sun-dried tomatoes?
I think I'm quite ambivalent to sun-dried tomato. I don't think I've got a strong opinion either way.
Yeah, fair enough. And so, yeah, I
Like
was gonna
many
ask you-
people. Like
You
many
are?
people do.
Well, more what I'm getting at is the fact that I don't think sun-dried tomatoes are like a middle-class Ponzi addition to a toasty.
Elliot, I'm sorry to break it to you, but as soon as you describe the fruit you're putting in something, it becomes middle class.
Okay, fair enough. Well, you've put that so well. I can't really. You trumped that. I was arguing that with my mum earlier, and because I don't think they're that. As a student living, in halls, I was still eating sun-dried tomatoes, but maybe that is just me.
Yeah. I mean, start putting grapes in your toasty, then you've got an argument.
That's just weird. Hang on. Whilst we're talking about grapes, though,
Don't knock it before you try it, boys. That's all I'm saying.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, I will try it. In fact, Cam, you've not actually heard, but episode of the podcast, we said if anybody wants to send in requests for toasties that we're gonna for us to try,
Yeah.
they can do so. They can send it to our Instagram
Well, there
or
you go.
comment on YouTube.
Have a nice strong smoky cheddar,
All right.
a decent quality ham, and
Okay.
cut some grapes in half and stick them in and see what happens.
All right, I will, and I'll comment on it in a future podcast
Good.
as soon as I can.
And
But
you can thank me later for that revelation that's put you all onto the best thing that's ever happened.
It's going to
a
be so
toasty.
weird. Well, I was going to say we're going to have thousands of people coming back to us like, wow, this man's just revolutionised our life. But I'm not sure we're at that many followers yet.
Maybe when they listen back to the first guested
That's
episode.
it. We'll get messages in like 5 years' time, and it'll be people like, who was that that suggested the grapes in the toasty? But before we move on from the fruit quickly,
Yes.
because I have strong opinions on this. What do you think of raisins?
Well, again, I wouldn't say I would choose them out of a fruit lineup to eat, but I don't mind them. Strange. I'm a fan of raisins in a curry
Yeah.
and in
Yeah,
a
me
coronation
too.
sandwich. I'll go for that. In fact, I would say that's the only time I would actively prefer to have raisins present
In a curry.
in a coronation chicken sandwich. Yeah, in particular.
Right, okay. Well, that's just reminded me though. You said sandwich, and whilst we were talking about toasties, I was going to Willie Cane's because you introduced me to that, and that's just a great little hidden sandwich shop in Leicester City Centre.
Absolutely. If you're in Leicester and you want a sandwich, check out Willie Cane's, and also for extra comedy value, it's called Willie Cane's.
Hang on, why is that funny, Cam? Explain that one for us. No, before you do, let's move on to some real topics outside of sandwiches and fruit and putting fruit in sandwiches and all of this nonsense. Yeah. So we're going to start talking about some music because John and I are a band. We are Still More. Are you familiar with this?
Yes, I am. I'm very familiar with it. And finally, we released some music.
Hey, yeah, just for you, just for your pleasure. We did release a song. There will be another one coming soon. And to anyone listening that's not heard our song, it's called Turn to See. You find it on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, anywhere else that you listen to music.
Yeah, I recommend.
Shameless plug. Thank you. That's kind of you to say. So you write music yourself, am I right? You do. You write songs, and
yes.
So as a fellow songwriter, we're curious as to how you go about writing songs, whether you have any methods. Because a lot of people ask me, how do you do it? Like what do you start with? How do you do it? What instrument do you play as well?
So I play guitars mostly.
Mm-hmm.
I do play a bit of keys, and I occasionally write on keys as well if I need to. Well, I don't know. It kind of gives you the song a slightly different feel, doesn't it? If you write from keys instead of guitar.
Yeah.
So I play a bit of a mix of those two. I basically play enough keys to put 5 chords together to write a song with.
Yeah.
So
that's relatable.
So you're a much better keys player than me, Elliot.
I don't. Yeah,
yourself down.
I don't know. Thanks.
So that's what I used to write. And generally, I have 2 approaches to songwriting. One is the kind of standard. Okay, I'm going to sit down and try and write a song.
Yeah.
And I think I'm a more talented lyricist than I am a melody writer. So I always start with the words.
Yeah.
And write a song or some verses or a chorus and see where that takes me. And then I might get a tune in my head that kind of fits the words, or get a tune and then decide some chords to put to it, or lay some chords down with the lyrics and then make a melody on the top of that.
Yeah, I think I do it like that most of the time.
Yeah,
I think I normally I'd say the same for me. I think I'm stronger with the lyrics than the actual music side and melodies and things.
I find it really hard to write a melody when I've got nothing to put it to.
Yeah, I agree. Whereas John's really good at that.
I'm very I was going to say I like writing chords and then hearing the melody go along afterwards.
Yeah,
I like having
you're
the
really
whole
good
song and then put a melody on top of it.
Yeah, I think out of the songs that we've written, I think the ones that I find the catchiest and the ones that really get to me the most are the ones that you've written.
Yeah,
I think
I think it depends. I guess you might end up with 2 different strengths kind of different from those 2 approaches. With the lyrics you might say, I almost exclusively write worship music, and I think starting from a basis where I know the lyrics are theologically kind of sound, obviously, but also I try and write good lyrics that are theologically rich and have a point of difference, I guess, that make them interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Then you end up with a song that with interesting lyrics and that's kind of richer theologically, I guess. But if you start with a melody, then you end up with a really catchy hook, and then have to try and fit your words to it, I guess.
I think that's where when me and Elliot are writing, if I come up with a melody as just like on guitar or something, and then he can like even if I tell him the kind of melody for the lyrics, he's much better at coming up with the lyrics to fit it. Than I am.
Yeah, I that's where we work really well together. That's where we've not written a song together for ages, me and John, and I really miss it because I've written a bit by myself, but I struggle. I think we complement each other's talents quite well. I'm pretty screwed by myself, but yeah, there's so many approaches to it, and it's hard. The one I find hardest is sitting down at the keyboard and just going, right, I'm going to write a song.
Yeah,
I find that hard.
So interestingly, I do often, if I've got some spare time, sit down and think, right, I'm going to write a song, and then we'll start with the lyrics or whatever. But often what happens is, like I say, I write almost exclusively worship music, and I'll be I'll be just in a time of kind of private worship with my guitar, and be singing kind of something spontaneous, and then I don't know. There's a difference between singing spontaneously and singing something that you think that's good.
Yeah, definitely.
So then often I have to stop worshipping, get my phone out, quickly put voice notes on, and then stick it on, and then carry on again. So that's when I was talking about kind of two ways that I write. That's kind of that obviously is less predictable,
Yeah.
When it doesn't happen every time by any shot, but often that's when I come up with better melodies, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I kind of let the music or the chords or whatever I'm playing lead me, and then whatever I'm singing spontaneously kind of comes out with it. So
yeah.
Is it just worship music, or have you ever dabbled in the secular realm?
Oh, occasionally, but I find it really hard to write convincing songs about
life.
Yeah, because
well, because your life is faith.
Yeah. That's true.
Well, exactly. That's the thing that's most true to me, and and I don't feel like I haven't had I don't know. Yeah, like you say, and it's my conviction as a man, I guess, that everything I do is about my faith. So that's kind of where I am. Powerful. But I think there's lots of brilliant Christians who write secular songs. I think the world needs more of that. But I don't think it's my calling necessarily to write those. So
yeah, for sure. I get that. I find it really difficult. I think I don't know if we covered it on a podcast before, but John and I have said before, like, we tried writing music together. We tried to do secular music. We've tried it a couple of times over like the last few years, and it never ever clicked for us. It was just that feeling of like, I didn't feel I could write something convincing. It just didn't feel right. I didn't know what to write about that wasn't cringe. We
were very young.
I heard it.
We hadn't had life experiences to put.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, exactly.
But I just thought with everything we wrote, I was like, if I heard this on the radio, I would find it cringy and rubbish. Like, that was how I felt about what I was writing. And then we tried doing, writing about our faith. We thought, this is something that's very important to us.
Yeah.
Something that we both share. We've both grown up in the church. We've both got a very strong faith now. And that it sprung from there. It wasn't just that it kind of suddenly clicked. It really kind of, for us, really suddenly started flowing. And it was a massive shock, really, to start writing songs and actually know what we were doing suddenly. It felt quite natural. But
yeah, I think that's the thing, and if you listen to, I must admit now, I'm not a great fan of modern pop music. But if you listen to pop music with its loads of co-writers and things like that, I don't think it's written to dance to or to kind of have in the background while you're driving or whatever. But it's not. I don't really feel like pop music is written to listen to anymore. I don't think it's particularly a genuine. It's got lots of co-writers. It doesn't feel like it's the artist's kind of genuine story, and so I think you're right. I don't think people necessarily. It's not about writing convincing stuff anymore. But for me, I would just struggle to write something that I, like you say, would enjoy listening to. I think, flipping heck, who's this corny?
yeah, that's it. And I've always thought, because people
child writing these
but people always say, like, do you? A lot of people are like, I hate hearing myself back. I wouldn't want to listen to something I'd written.
Yeah.
But I've always seen it, as if I wouldn't be happy to listen to it back, I shouldn't expect anyone else to.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I
think there's a lot of that comes from people. I wouldn't say I particularly enjoy listening to myself back, but I think you can have a kind of an honest appraisal of what you've written, whether you whether you enjoy listening to your own voice or not, or you think, wow, is that really what other people have to listen to? You know when you've written something good, I think, and when not.
No, I agree.
I don't know about you boys, but I'm definitely my own harshest critic. So I think if I like it, then it must be. It must stand up by itself at least.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just thinking now. I'm not sure I've ever, unless I have and I didn't know. I don't think I've ever heard anything written.
No, I don't think so. So, it's definitely something I'm still developing. I've had lots of encouragement along the way, but I've not got around to releasing anything yet.
Yeah, well, that would be amazing. When you do, when you do, eventually, we'll be promoting it everywhere for you. We'll be shouting it out.
Really kind.
That's something I'd be really excited to hear for sure. And maybe we could write together one day. That would be good fun.
Yeah, why not? Let's do it.
That'd be really good. So still on songwriting and kind of influences and where you said you write a song and you occasionally think, oh, actually this is all right. Like, do you try and write to sound like artists that you like? What
no,
artists
I don't
do
think
you like?
so. I think unconsciously, I definitely will do, like everyone you listen to. You sound like who you write like who you listen to.
Yeah.
I occasionally I've thought to myself, and again, I think this is why I struggle to write secular music, because I try to be other people too much rather than myself.
Yeah.
I think it's taken me a long time to write music as myself, not as me pretending to be, I don't know, the Stereophonics or Sam Fender, So I think there's definitely something unconscious that means you sound like who you listen to. But I think when I write songs now, I think it obviously comes out, but it's not like I'm writing to try and sound like anybody. Which I think generally is a good place to be.
Yeah, definitely. I think what artists are you into? Who would you say? Because even if they don't inspire you to sound like them, are there any artists who particularly inspire you to write music? Because I know there are a few like that for me. There are artists I don't want to sound like, say, Arctic Monkeys or somebody, but when I listen to their music, it makes me want to write music. Yeah,
it makes you want to write for sure. I think this is actually somebody I've only just recently got into and come to love. But I think he is the driving influence for almost everyone I listen to, and that's Bruce Springsteen.
Okay.
So he is the person that makes me think, oh, wow, I want to write songs. So he's kind of an old guy, depending on the demographic of your podcast listeners. They may or may not be into him, but if you bands such as like Arctic Monkeys and people like the Killers, and Stereophonics and the Strokes and all those kind of people.
Oh, I love all those bands.
They all, and U2 even as well.
Yeah.
All of them will kind of say, I listen to Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
And so like, the genre, the kind of bands I love, I love the Stereophonics. I went to see them actually. I went to see them 2 weeks before lockdown.
Wow.
It was my last experience of a mass gathering was watching Stereophonics in Nottingham, which was amazing. But they're another band that makes me want to write music, because they've got amazing guitar solos and whatever. But Kelly Jones, who's the frontman, has got the most amazing voice, and he writes the most amazing songs. But again, it kind of all comes back to I think they would probably say they listen to Bruce Springsteen as well, and he tells stories when he writes songs. He appeals to kind of hope, and he talks about real people. So I guess
it's wholesome, isn't it?
Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily say he's my biggest musical influence, but I think he's influenced everyone who influences me. So it kind of starts with him.
Yeah.
But all those bands I mentioned. So Stereophonics, Killers.
Yeah.
A bit of U2.
Yeah.
I love Foo Fighters and the Kings of Leon and things like that.
Yeah.
So I guess they're what you call my leading influence. Basically, I'm into dad rock. So if you
they're proper good
if you haven't
bands,
heard of those people, then ask your dad, and he'll know.
Yeah, that's it. I think my dad's got at least one album, like a debut album by quite a few of those bands.
Yeah.
And I got into a lot of them through picking up the album. One that I really liked that he had was I know you won't like them because they went down the pop route, but Maroon 5.
Yeah, no, I do own Songs About Jane.
That is a great album, isn't it?
It's a good, really, really good album. Yeah,
Songs About Jane is excellent.
And I think some other things I love that are probably I've got some more kind of poppy melodies. I absolutely love Motown, which again
Wow.
if you're under the age of 60, you might not have ever heard of. But
no, all of our listeners are over 60.
My dad's well into Motown. That's all I know.
You know, I recommend you check out a guy called Smokey Robinson and a band called The Temptations. Again, beautiful songs. And I really love 80s pop.
Mm-hmm. That surprises me a little bit. I love 80s pop. Yeah, I wouldn't put that with the rock, the 80s rock.
Yeah. But I think I've always said, I don't know whether you can necessarily define kind of straight down the line rock music as interesting, but I've always liked, I think I've liked music that has kind of a broad range of influences on it, and so I think 80s kind of sums that up, and so do those bands. You know, if you take the Killers, for example, their first album was very 80s kind of pop, but with a bit of Springsteen in as well, and kind of a bit of desert.
Was their first album Hot Fuss?
Yes.
Yeah, it was. Such a good album. I love that.
Yeah,
album.
Absolutely. And then when Sam's Town came out, everyone was shocked. It was like, who's this band all of a sudden writing American rock music?
Yeah.
But,
have you heard their album? It was an album of like demos and B-sides and stuff called Sawdust.
No, I haven't. And that's got a song called Shadow Play on it which is a cover of I'm going to embarrass myself by forgetting what they're called now. One of my favourite 80s bands. You can cut all this out, John.
Yeah. I can just skip to the bit where you remember the name.
It'll be like an abrupt little cut.
Became New Order.
Not Dire Straits or someone.
No, they were.
There's a cover of a Dire Straits song on there as well.
They sung Joy Division. There we go. Joy Division.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see with the Killers quite easily where they trace their influence. But yeah, so I love kind of some popular stuff as well. But yeah, I think 80s pop is just fun. I like.
Yeah, I agree. It was one of the first. I guess it's a bit broader than a genre, but a kind of era. Yeah. It was one of the first eras in music that I became really obsessed with.
Yeah, and I love the fact that that kind of small bands doing some interesting things. You know, people like Depeche Mode and and again, I'm going to forget loads of names now. Now I need to talk about them. And people like Soft Cell and the Human League and people like that. You know, they could.
Well, my favourite, one of the first bands I ever got interested in, and I still love them. I was supposed to be seeing them in May, but obviously that was cancelled. It's on next year. It's supposed to be on next year instead. Is Pet Shop Boys?
Oh yeah.
What do you think of them?
I think I've recently got into them more. Yeah. I used to think they were. I don't know. I wasn't a fan, but definitely recently I've come to them, I think. Always on My Mind is one of the best covers in the history of music. So, but then so I love kind of that stuff as well. And then a guy that I've already mentioned that I was meant to be seeing last Tuesday, but obviously been pushed back a year. Is a guy called Sam Fender who gets caught with the Shields Springsteen, because that's where he's from, North Shields in Newcastle. But again, I think he's a really good example of not necessarily like writing to sound like somebody, but again having really obvious. He's got a song. He's got lots of songs about this kind of stories of the Northeast, but there's one called Dead Boys, which is about male suicide in Newcastle,
right?
Which is massive, and it's just the most beautiful song, and it's written kind of really sympathetically, but it's also an amazing song. So so kind of as a slightly newer talent that I really love.
I've heard a lot. He's very fashionable. Like a lot of people, a lot of people.
My music taste is very unfashionable. So,
well, there you go. You got one fashionable artist on there.
I've managed to like somebody that's liked by everyone. Yeah,
I hear a lot about him, but I've never listened to him myself, and I probably should.
So I'm going to shift it back onto more faith stuff. We'll keep it music related. So, for me, music is an extremely important part of my faith. It's how I worship, how a way I spend time with God, just sitting there playing guitar, whatever. Listening to music, telling other people about my faith. Obviously, we just released a song, and
telling other people about our music.
No, about our faith.
Plugging it. Oh, sorry, go on.
About our faith, and bringing other people into a space of worship, leading at church, and stuff. So, for me, it's an amazingly huge part of what I do in terms of my life with God. So I guess the question is how important is music to our faith? Do you think, and why?
Good question. Well, as you said, I think it's hugely important, and it's easy for us three who are all musical to sit here and talk about the importance of music for worship and music for our faith. But I think if you ask any Christian, is music important, they'll say yes. Whether they play or whether they enjoy singing or not, like worship is something that, or music for our faith is something that we all know is important.
Yeah.
And I think that why question is really interesting. I think there's something really powerful about communal singing, singing together. There's something that it kind of stirs up hope within us, and it stirs up our feelings of truth and faith and things like that. And I think there's something really powerful about God does things through songs that he doesn't do through anything else. It's like when a preacher preaches, yes, he can touch your heart and your brain, and he can definitely like move your emotions, and the Holy Spirit blesses his words, and God can use those words to touch all of you. And the same when you're praying, obviously. But there's something about music that's particularly powerful, I think, on a kind of an unconscious level, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
like,
it's the spiritual teaching of what the song's doing, not necessarily anything about the song, but where you are in the presence while you're listening.
Yeah, and it's truth mixed with melody, and with declaring that together as a church.
Yeah.
Or even singing along to a song where other people are singing. That kind of doing it together, I think, it is incredibly powerful. And it's a question I've heard a lot, being around kind of worship leaders and worship bands and things. Why is it that worship provokes something that that just speaking or praying or waiting on the Spirit can't?
Yeah. Not
that those things are bad, obviously, but it's kind of like a package. You worship to kind of complete that package. But the answer is nobody really knows, but it does something different. There's something about singing the truth and kind of a really beautiful melody or a harmony or a piece of music working together that can really touch us on a deep level that other things can't reach. So I think that's why music's so important, because people recognise it touches us in ways other things can't.
Yeah.
And we sometimes flip the perspective around the wrong way. People say we worship because it's good. We worship because we recognise that it's something we enjoy doing. But I really believe that God made us to worship, and made music to allow us to worship, and made us to enjoy that, and made it to be good for us, and thus we do it because it's been blessed by God to do something that nothing else can do.
Yeah.
I genuinely believe that. I genuinely think it's a unique gift from God, and we've been made as humans to enjoy music, to make music, and to use it for worship, and to use it to allow His Spirit to move in ways that we couldn't otherwise. And we see that in the Bible as well. I think sometimes my church is a big charismatic church. We have a band. It can be easy to think this is kind of a modern, not necessarily invention, but a modern phenomenon, I guess. But actually, when we look to the Bible, music has always played an incredibly important part. King David was a really talented harp player, and when he played for King Saul, who was descending into madness, peace came upon Saul, and nothing else could kind of sort that out for him except David playing the harp.
Yeah.
And after the Last Supper, before Jesus goes out to pray in the Garden of Gethsemane, the disciples sing a hymn together. So I think you see all the way through, it's not a modern thing that we've decided as kind of Christians at some point, or when Jesus had died and we were been resurrected and ascended, and we were working out how to follow him. The disciples thought, "Oh, why don't we sing some songs? That's a good plan." I think we can clearly see that the heritage of music, I guess, and songs is eternal, and because God put it in us to make music and to allow music to do something in us that nothing else can.
I'm glad that you went into the history of music in the Bible and stuff, because I was gonna ask for anybody listening who is not a Christian or just not familiar with church, really, because there's bound to be some people. It must. I don't know. It's hard to say because I've grown up, going to church my whole life, but I don't know if it sounds weird to say, music is our faith, and what does that actually look like when we turn up at church? What does it mean? Do we just, stand in a room with songs like blasting at us, or what? So, obviously, I thought it's probably quite valuable to explain that the way it works when you go into church, it's part of the service, part of the, as part of the service, you'll have somebody standing at the front teaching to you and referring to the Bible, and you'll have people praying over you and whatever. And so when we say the worship part of it, the music part of church, we mean the fact that so like Cam said, at a church like ours, a kind of charismatic modern day church, you've got a band which could be made up of, how many people would you say? It could be 1 up to like 10 or more. It really ranges, especially with the worship leader that we have. He's happy to try anything.
7 guitars, why not? Just try it out.
Yeah, that did happen once, didn't it?
Play with different capos, lads. Different capos.
He's amazing. Full respect to our worship leader Pedro. He's amazing at what he does. But and they lead a song. They don't perform as such. They're on a stage at the front. But rather than, we wouldn't use that term performance. It's.
I mean, there is an element
worship,
of performance. You can't take away the performance, because otherwise it's, people have to know that there's something there. There's a band. It can't just be a pitch black and then there's a sound coming from somewhere.
I guess, I suppose it'd be weird if it was like just a backing track and there was just nobody at the front, would it? Wouldn't it? That would be really odd. But in a sense of like none of the attention or the focus or the kind of worship is on the people in the band.
No.
It's all on God. That's what we do. We sing to God and we sing about God, and the songs are kind of about God, about our love for God, about His love for us, about what He's done for us, about all sorts. I mean, there's worship songs for everything. Really.
Absolutely. I think it's really interesting to consider the point of our time of worship. Because I must admit, sometimes I sing a song in church and I wonder what the point of singing that particular song was, because the words don't seem to do what the band were trying to do. So not that the song is pointless, but it's not being used in the way it was intended. So for me, as I lead worship in church, I think that I really feel there's 2 kind of main things that we do. Is we teach the truth through the songs that we choose to sing. Because the words, as you said, Elliot, they describe God, they talk about Him, and they tell us who He is, and they remind us of these truths. So if people are new to faith, they kind of learn who they believe in through the songs. And if people who have been Christians for a long time have forgotten God's characters or His goodness, or have had a difficult week or a difficult day or whatever, they're reminded again of how good He is. And also, I think the most important thing for me is worship is a time where we kind of basically we try and get everything else out between us and God. And there's something about music that allows people to concentrate on God, and there's something about singing to God directly that allows us to concentrate on Him. And so, as I lead worship, the point of leading worship for me in our services and when I lead for kind of smaller settings as well and whatever, that the reason why we do it is because we want to sing about how amazing God is. And okay, so three reasons. I thought I forgot the most obvious is to tell God how amazing He is, to worship. I guess I thought that one was self-explanatory, but I think it's worth saying that we worship God because He's worth telling how amazing He is. So we do that, but we also remind ourselves of who we worship. But also we we kind of get rid of all our distractions by just singing about God. It helps us to come close to Him, and then that kind of leads us on then to the rest of the service, knowing that we're close to God, for Him to do what He wants, and through what other people say and lead us in, and what the Holy Spirit wants to do.
Yeah. And okay, so and obviously me and Elliot know this, but because we've been in your youth group. But how do you get your youth now? Or maybe it's changed. Maybe it's changed from when we were there.
Yeah.
How do you get them involved in worship so that and knowing what it means, I guess as well.
Yeah, I think I was pondering this question, and I think again it's a really good question. There's definitely something different about leading young people to leading a kind of a wider age congregation or an older congregation or whatever. But I think there's my goal with my teenagers in worship is to allow them to help them worship God passionately, and not to feel awkward or anxious or self-aware, I guess, or have any reason why they might not to do that. And so I think part of that happens outside of in fact, probably most of that happens outside of our time of worship, where we encourage them to live a life that means they're close to Jesus. So when they come to our youth group, then they're ready to worship because they want to worship. You can't ever make somebody want to worship. So I think I think a lot of that comes down to what we do outside of that time. But I think
that's really interesting. I like that.
Yeah. So I think you can see from somebody's life whether they're going to worship passionately or not.
Yeah.
Or sometimes I use the word properly, which is bad really, because there's no proper way to worship. But when they're not, when they are engaging, in worship, when they're actively worshiping God, I think a lot of that comes from desire to worship God, and that comes from kind of encouraging them to lead a life that gets them close to Jesus, but also teaching them why Jesus is worthy of worship. So a lot of that happens outside of worship, but specifically when we try and lead them in worship, I think releasing young people to lead worship is really important. And I think for a start, young people really buy into things more when they see young people doing it, or when their mates are leading them, because they want to really support them. And so it's definitely really effective, I guess, to release young people in worship. And I think as a leader, this is being a really young, inexperienced youth worker, so a slightly less young, slightly less inexperienced youth worker is you have to kind of, like, everything doesn't have to be perfect, if that makes sense. I don't need to do everything all the time, to make sure it's at a certain standard or whatever. The most beautiful thing is I've learned as a leader is allowing other leaders to grow. And so when I lead worship, when I lead or organise a time of worship for my young people, what I love to do is to get other young people involved, because, like I say, it gets them to buy in, the other young people to buy in as they support their mates, but also they're we're preparing worship leaders for the future. I think that's really important. And it's okay when things go wrong, when the worship leader doesn't know that when I come up to pray at the end, they need to keep on playing to keep the atmosphere, when they just stop on the last chord, it's okay. People are allowed to make mistakes and to grow. So I think that's something I've had to learn, that not every time of worship needs to be, I guess, you don't need to see the immediate result of a time of worship where people are passionately meeting with God. If you've released a leader, if you've sown a seed in somebody's heart, if you've allowed them to see a truth about Jesus that they didn't know, you don't necessarily need to have immediate physical results to
absolutely,
or even just someone like started singing for the first time during the
exactly
worship.
So I guess not everything has to be perfect. It doesn't have to feel powerful to be powerful, I guess. So that's I think that's one thing. But the other thing is, I think there's just something about people where as we begin to become more aware of our bodies and our social situations, and singing becomes, unless you're good at it, becomes perhaps a more awkward thing to do.
Yeah.
You have to really create an environment, I think, where young people feel comfortable in worshipping.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think a lot of people get this wrong. I think you need to play lots of jumpy up and downy songs, which are great. And if you go to, people, if you're listening to the podcast and you're a Christian, you'll be familiar with Soul Survivor. If you go somewhere like that, they create amazing atmospheres where people can basically rave while they're worshipping.
Yeah.
But I can't do that in my room, in my youth group room with a couple of guitars and a cajon or whatever. So I think, again, you just have to know what you can produce. And so I think making people feel comfortable, it might be some practical things like lowering the lights so they can't see everyone while they're trying to worship.
Yeah.
It might be turning the band up slightly louder so they can't necessarily hear themselves as well. And things like that it just makes them feel more comfortable. But also, I think the thing that I found is everything takes a bit longer. So it takes longer to lead them into like real kind of concentration on Jesus. So that just means you have to take your time a bit more with the song, and kind of allow people to concentrate and relax and whatever. But it also takes a little bit longer for people. Takes a while for people to be comfortable in that environment. So,
well,
you boys will know, not necessarily for you two, because you boys have, sorry, I'll try and stop referring to you as boys.
It's all right, you lads.
You two will know that with a strong faith and confident voices, you might have always been to worship, but I think it takes time for you to get into that, I guess. So
I was about to say, sorry, I was about to jump in and say, actually, because I used to be really shy. It was probably before you actually knew me, really, but I used to be so shy. And when I first moved up into the youth group, I don't know how old I was. Like, how old would I have been? About 13 or 14? Yeah. And I was so shy, and worship gave me a lot of anxiety. It made me really nervous. And I was never I was never tone deaf. I wasn't. I was always somebody who could hit notes and sing. So I didn't lack confidence in that. But I was a shy person, and I think that's just a thing as well. I think there'll be a lot of young people who are, even if they are capable of producing a decent sound or something that's not going to completely humiliate them in front of their friends.
Absolutely,
it can still be really hard.
Yeah,
and you're dealing with people at that age. That's your job, Yeah, I think what you do to get people out of their shell and help them in music, especially, is a tough job, and I'm sure you do a very good job of it.
Yeah, I think it is. And like I was saying, I think I guess I rambled for a little while, but I think it just takes time, and you'll know from the dynamics when you were in the youth group. Elliot and John, as you say, Elliot, when you started off, you would have maybe seen the older ones slightly more confident in worship, in their faith, and then as you grew through, that kind of became you. And I think at the end, in summary, I guess you just have to be more patient. And the most amazing thing for me, again, is, got very little to do with me and a lot to do with what God's done in all of your lives. But seeing you go from, I met you when you were 15, Elliot and John. So seeing you go from the kind of slightly shy 15-year-olds that you were to being the when you were kind of at the top end of the group, the real passionate worshippers that you became, was the most wonderful thing for me to see. And that's I think the nature of youth work is you build up and you encourage and you take time and you expose people to worship, and they might lose concentration after 2 songs and start thinking about what they're going to have out of the fridge when they get home or whatever. Or the girl that sat across from them in the youth group or whatever else. But,
that was me.
I know. But you just have to take time, and as kind of people develop their own faith and understand why they're worshipping Jesus, and it's not just because they've always have done or because their parents have taken them to places where this happens, but because they really have fallen in love with Jesus. And as they realise who he is and what he's done, and as they realise they love him and they believe in him and they trust him, and as they become more comfortable and as they become more passionate and their faith grows, then you can see sometimes it's like a switch. Yeah. All of a sudden, like, a couple of people go for it, and then that's it. You know, the atmosphere changes in the room, and people absolutely. Really worship. And so that's the lessons I've learned. I guess you have to do some practical things to make people comfortable. You have to really try be intentional about releasing them into leading worship for each other, and be really patient and allow them their faith to grow at kind of its natural rate, and don't try and force it. And then when you get to a point where you've got a group who know how to worship, who love Jesus, then enjoy it, I guess.
Yeah, wow, that's some valuable stuff. I like hearing that.
Great,
thanks. And actually, that's a process that I've had to go through a couple of times. So I guess when I first became a youth worker, with your kind of era of my youth group, when I started, you didn't necessarily feel free in worship, because of all those things, and by the end you did, and there was amazing freedom in worship. And then you guys moved on, and we have kind of another era of Glow, and we're kind of working to that point. And so when that kind of era ended and we started again, worship time, you know, if I looked at it with my human eyes, I'd think, blimey, where's all the energy? You know, where's the passion gone? Where's the worship gone? But actually, we're starting again, and we're making people comfortable, and we're being patient, and we're releasing leads, and we're allowing people's faith to develop, and allowing them to walk with Jesus, and allow them to begin a life of discipleship, and then eventually they'll get it. The light bulb moment will happen, and
absolutely,
we'll have freedom again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can only imagine it must be pretty rewarding to see different year groups come through and move on. It's a bit like being a teacher, isn't it, really? having those kids that you get attached to, and then they move on, but then you've always got more coming through the system.
Yeah. Were you implying that I got attached to you, Elliot?
Not me specifically.
We didn't move on for a reason, Cam. We're still here because of...
Also, I was just going to add one other little thing. Just because it dawned on me when you referred to the fact that you met us when we were 15. It dawned on me that not everybody listening will necessarily know how old John and I are now.
Right, yeah.
Because 45. I think from... I was going to say, from a voice, you can't really tell. I reckon you can probably tell we're not 5. We're both, as of recording in June 2020, we're both 19. I don't know whether that surprises anybody or not.
It's been 4 long years.
It's been a while, hasn't it? But it's, I mean, it's almost time to wrap up. Really, that's quite a nice way to close it. It's been really good to catch up with you, and you're one person I've really been missing actually during lockdown, and since being in Birmingham over the last. Obviously, I moved for uni in Birmingham in September, and I was coming back a fair bit, to be honest. But there's people like you who previously would have been so regular in my life.
Yeah,
and I'm suddenly not seeing anymore. You know, it's hard to swallow. You know,
well, that's kind of you to say, and it gives me lots of joy to see you guys kind of spread your wings and go off and do amazing things. And when you come back and I see you guys worshipping and making music and whatever, you know, and the rest of the people that have gone on to, well, the rest of the people that have gone on, really, not necessarily to amazing things.
They've just gone on. They've just moved on. They've not really done much, but they've just gone.
But you know, I deeply miss you all, but it does give me joy to see you guys crack on with life, really. Spread your wings where you find yourselves. So
that's great. We'll never be far away from you.
Yeah.
We'll always be coming back, and like we said, we'll co-write music with you at some point for sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure that'll happen one day. So
yeah,
we're about ready to wrap up.
Just before we wrap up the show, we've got a little new thing.
Yeah,
a new thing.
It's called
an exciting feature.
Little segment. Yeah, it's called Opinion of the Week.
A working title. We're trying to come up with maybe something that's like a bit catchier, but that'll do for now.
Yes. So this week's opinion of the week this week is that wind chimes should be kept inside. Hope you enjoyed that. That was opinion of the week.
that was it. That was opinion of the week. All right, hang on. I've
never heard such a self-defeating
He properly sounded miserable, didn't he? Oh man, John, who nicked your wind chime?
I reckon the origin of this is quite simple. John's been sat in his garden trying to read or write music or
be productive.
Do whatever he's doing, being productive.
Yeah.
And there's some next door neighbour's got a wind chime. That's
that's it. I reckon that's
I'm not going to pretend like that story isn't 100% true. But
I think what
I mean is that wind chimes, right? I know they're wind chimes, but my point is that you only ever want to hear a wind chime when you want to hear a wind chime. You don't want to hear a wind chime all the time. This is not a Dr. Seuss book.
I was about to say exactly that. It sounded like a Dr. Seuss book.
So, what I mean is they should be kept inside so you can just flick it when you want to hear the wind chimes.
Right.
Rather than have it constantly going.
But John, for you personally, how often would that be? How often would you suddenly go, I really want to hear a wind chime right now?
I wouldn't. That's why I don't own wind chimes.
So you would just never...
I'm saying for my pleasure, other people should keep them inside.
Oh my word. Cam, you got anything to say on this topic?
I just don't think it's ever going to happen, is it, John? Wind chimes were made for the out. That's kind of that's
true. I mean, they're wind, aren't they? You don't get wind inside,
really, isn't it?
That's true.
Yeah. I think the perfect way to sum up this opinion of the week really is with an in-betweeners quote. It's just not really relevant, is it? It's just not. I'm very glad.
I get you though, John. I get that feeling of frustration when there's a slightly over-keen wind chime in the next door neighbour's garden and they want to shut up.
Over-keen? It's not the fault of the wind chime, though. It's the wind.
I feel your pain, but
just these wind chimes getting rowdy.
I don't think it's going to catch on, John, if I'm honest with you.
Oh, man. Well, we should get it catching on.
Yeah.
Anyway, there'll be another opinion next week. It'll be something just as trivial and completely, utterly irrelevant as that. Let's wrap up here. Thank you for being with us.
No problem. I'm honoured to be your first guest.
We're honoured that you said yes.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've been Elliot and he's been John.
I've been John and he's been Elliot.
Thanks for listening to episode 3 of The Still More Show.